Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Game Industry Legends interview series. My name is Chris Melissinos, and I'm the Principal Evangelist for video games at AWS. Today, I will be speaking with game legend and the father of the first-person shooter genre, co-founder of id Software, and co-creator of Commander Keen, Doom, Doom 2, and Quake, John Romero. The recipient of the Game Developers Choice Awards Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2023 Game Developers Conference, John and I sit down to discuss his inspiringly prolific career that helped bring some of the most impactful and longest-lasting video games to the world. It is my privilege to welcome to the program game industry legend, John Romero. So, yeah, again, John, wonderful to see you again. The last time I saw you was actually at GDC earlier this year, where you'd received the Lifetime Achievement Award, which was just absolutely incredible. Thrilled for you. And as we were talking about before we started the program, you were there with your mom, and we're gonna talk a bit about some of the stuff from your book. And what I thought was just lovely was there was a colleague that's actually an industry colleague that I'd really just met, and she was like, "Oh my God, I think that's John Romero up there." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it is." She's like, I've never met him before. I'm such a fan." I'm like, "Well, I mean, nothing's going on. We're all just standing around here. Let's just go say hi." No, I don't want to do it. I'm like, he is like the nicest guy. Let's just go over and do that. And you're just like, "Oh, hey, so nice." And she's like, "Can I take a picture?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, of course," And I love it. I absolutely love it. Just so that's the last time I had a chance to see you. And I'm thrilled you were able to join us today. So let's go ahead and jump straight on in here. So the first thing I like to start with is what are called the Fast Five. So tell me about so we're going to talk about your earliest days with computer games. So what's the first computer or video game system that you remember having in the home?
That was an Apple II Plus in April of 1982.
Very good.
I've used stuff before that, but yeah.
Right, but that was the first one in the home. We're going to get to that Apple II. Yeah. What was your first arcade game that you really remember playing?
Oh, geez. It had to have been Targ.
Targ.
Targ, yeah. For some reason, the arcade that I was in the 70s in Tucson, Arizona, right after moving an electromechanical cabinet out, they put Targ in there.
Oh man, I thought it was going to be maybe like a Space Invaders thing or something like that. Targ, that's a good pull. That's a very Ed Freeze would be very proud of you. That's a good deep cut.
Nice.
All right. So when you started programming, what was your first language? Having an Apple II Plus, was it BASIC or what was your first program?
Yeah, it was AppleSoft BASIC. Yeah. Pretty much everybody in the 70s, it was BASIC.
Yeah, exactly. I was a VIC-20 kid, so yeah. Although we had really tiny space in which to write 3,293 bytes or something. So pretty difficult. From your earliest games that you played, which ones had probably the biggest impact on you that you may even still revisit to this day? So give me a name of a game or two that stuck out when you first experienced and that stick with you to this day.
Pac-Man absolutely changed everything for me because I played everything in the 70s. So much, shoot the alien type stuff. And Pac-Man was like, wow, you're running away. You're like collecting stuff in a maze and running away from ghosts. And that's where, that's where game design really, it showed me that game design is kind of limitless and you can make a game about anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that is one arcade game that just changed the way designers thought about games, thought about characters, and it also brought women and men into arcades, adults and kids all of the sudden, right? So, yeah. Yeah,
and sound, too. The sound was a brand new sound chip, right? It was just incredible sounding.
Plus, I mean, we had Pac-Man Fever that we would go to roller rinks and, skate around to, right?
Yeah, so. It was also just like the second color game as well, because Galaxian had come out just before it, but it was the second color game.
Yep.
So it was also, really notable for being one of the earliest, best looking, most fun. It exploded. It was just gigantic.
That's right. All right. And then the most influential programmer, designer, industry figure, who is one that you could just go back to as their technique or their process cemented in your memory as just being like the pinnacle of design?
Well, Nasser Jabeli is my favorite early industry god. Basically, he was a programming master. His story is incredible. Programmed. He did not have a source code editor, so everything he typed went directly into memory. There was no source code, and all of his games. He wrote 9 games in 1 year, 1981, and in all of his games, all the variables and everything he had to remember in his head, and he could only remember all of it for about 2 weeks. So he had to finish his games really fast, and he did. He finished his games in just weeks.
I mean, if he had to basically get in and then page out that much data in his brain, then there was no going back and debugging anything. Like that was it. Oh my god!
He worked on he made Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, and Secret of Mana after that.
Incredible.
And that was it. He's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a pretty good mic drop, though. All right. Those are your Fast 5. Thank you for doing that. All right. So I also want to mention, too, that you just launched your autobiography, Doom Guy, Life in First Person. Why don't you tell us real quickly about that and kind of how the book came about?
Sure. Yeah. It's my autobiography. And, it came about because a few years ago, I went to speak at a private conference in Canada. And instead of talking about my games that I made, which that's usually what I'm doing when I'm speaking, they said, can you do a talk about your life before you became a programmer and a game designer, to let everyone know where you came from and how you got to the point where you're making games. So, and then maybe you can walk us through the industry as you were going through it as it was happening, because really the computer game industry started in 1977 and I started programming in 79. So I saw everything. So I wrote this talk and I gave it, at that conference that they had, and people were pretty shocked at all the early childhood stuff. Yeah. And afterwards they said, some people said that needs to be in a book. Like, that's not anywhere. That's not in interviews anywhere. It's not written down anywhere. It wasn't in, books about you. And so I basically said, yeah, that's actually probably a good idea. And then when I thought about it later, I thought, yeah, I think I should tell the story, my story myself, tell it, because I was there. I'm the one who started the companies that was in, and made those games, and not somebody else, third party, writing about it. And also, I can be super precise about every game that I made. So if anyone wants to use the book as kind of a history book for id Software, at least, every single date is basically in there for everything we did. We made 13 games in 1991.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, I have the book, as I said to you before, on my Kindle. I need to get a signed copy from you, though. And I think the reason that you can describe it in such detail, right, is you describe yourself too as having a hyperthymesia, right? So the ability to really recall events from your past, in really exacting detail. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that I or others I know have that same ability, but what I do find, because we grew up in the same era, that when it comes to games and programming, I can recall exacting details of where I was, what the room looked like, who I was with, the smell of shag carpet, that type of stuff. But I can recall general details about other events, but not for this. And in your book, you say, you asked, does this ability lie dormant in us, or do we create it, or perhaps it's a combination of both of these things, right?
Yeah, it depends on the person. There's a story. It's true, of a person who basically got hit in the head with a baseball. And from that moment on, they remembered every second of their life. There was a permanently long-term memory, and they could recall at every second, at any time, what was happening.
Wow.
and what was going on and everything. So, that's an extreme form that actually like is really, really problematic for just trying to live life.
Sure.
And then there's just like mine, which is just, that's stuff that's just sitting there. I just remember it. Like it's there, but there's things I don't remember because to me, they didn't seem like they were, I guess, important enough to be put into that permanent bucket. And maybe hyperthymesia is just like an ease of moving stuff into long-term storage, where it might happen just like nobody thinks about it, but like maybe, your memories become long-term for a certain reason. And perhaps you could learn how to force it into long-term. So I remember when I was doing massive amounts of learning on the Apple II, there was a point where even at the very beginning, I had to just stop reading because my head was just full of so much stuff. I needed it to just kind of chill out. And it was like 2 days, maybe 2 days because I was learning so much, but I just filled my head and it was like, I need to remember all of this stuff because at that time, computers with 64K were fully knowable machines. You could remember everything about every byte of memory in those machines. So forcing yourself to learn and remember and memorize, like memorizing hexadecimal, memorizing locations of ROM, entry points and ROM routines and soft switches to do things on the screen or whatever. It was all important stuff. And so because of that, I think I also just forced myself to just start remembering basically everything. But the
everything that was important to you, everything that you deemed important. Yeah. And what I love about like books, systems of that era, like if you got a Commodore 64, it came with the schematics in the back of the book. Yeah. Like, you could see these things. Like,
the Apple II did, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that, I've often talked about in talks for many years when I talk about the VIC-20, and I really kind of gleaned this from your book, and then we're going to move on from your book to talk about, your incredible career, because I want people to go ahead and pick it up and read it. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it, and it's just a fantastic, fantastic book. But
Thanks.
Sure. I mean, look, in the book, you talk about you had a tumultuous, upbringing, right? And early life. And in my case, I was, I come from a family of divorce, and that happened at an early age. And so I would imagine, much like you, I also got a hold of this computer at this time when you don't have any power over anything in your life. You have no control. But this thing, if I could learn how to speak its language, I could make it do whatever I wanted it to do. And to give people that have no power the ability to control, right, and to create and to share and to do something that at that time it wasn't well understood by everybody else. I mean, that was it for me, right? My grades went straight in the toilet because all I wanted to do was program this machine, right? I feel there's something to that, right, in your story and, parallel lives of many of us that kind of grew up in that era.
Yeah, the book has a lot of relatable stories in it. There's a lot of people have grown up the same way, I've talked to so many people that have read the book and was like, I can't believe how many things are the same in my life that in your life. And one of the best things about the book is the fact that people can feel that and have the hope that like, I can do that. I can do the same thing that he did.
Yeah.
And especially for kids who might be in a situation like that, if they could read the book and feel hope and just like, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to make something of myself.
Yeah.
I think it's also like, that's probably the best part of having written the book is to do that.
And it's wonderful, and it will absolutely resonate and help, other people. So really fantastic. And, cheers to you for being such, pardon the pun, an open book when it came to your life there. Okay, so everybody go pick up the book. We're going to go ahead and jump back to the beginning. So your first computer, the Apple II Plus, which is now housed at the Strong Museum of Play up in Rochester. Yep. So how did it come into your life? How did an Apple II appear in your life?
Well, I had been using the mainframe at the college. nearby in Rockland, California, but I can't take it home, so I can only go there when I'm, hopefully not getting kicked out, when I was 11. And, I would go to stores. I'd go to Radio Shack and use the TRS-80s. I would go to like an audio video store and use an Atari 800 there. And basically all those computers had BASIC on them. So I could transfer my knowledge over and keep on typing away and learning. And when I went back to Sierra in the summer of 1980, they had an Apple II room. They opened up a new room and they filled it full of Apple IIs. And I was like, what is this? And I went in there and BASIC started, BASIC worked. And I saw they had color and they had graphics. I was like, this is so much better than that mainframe. Oh my God. So I started using the Apple II a lot, and I started learning a lot about the Apple II in that one room. And I would, it took a couple of years of me talking to my stepdad at the time, just telling him all the stuff I was learning on the computer at the college on my own. Like, that somehow never seemed to be important. But when you look back at it, it's crazy, But he thought about it and was like, yeah, I should probably get one so he can learn a lot more, because he actually isn't going to college because he's only 13 now. And, maybe having the computer at home would be useful. So I was lucky that he got the Apple II versus other computers, because the Apple II forces you to be a better programmer, because it does not have hardware support for anything. And to do anything on the computer, you had to program it yourself. Yeah. Especially all the graphics. So, and also sound. You can't just say, turn on a tone, play this tone for this long. It was like, click a speaker, touch a memory location, and you get a click out of the speaker, make music out of that. So, so it was a lot more work, but it was like, you had to get good at optimization and all kinds of assembly language techniques. So that was, amazing. And so we got a computer in 1982. We finally got a computer, and I set it up, and that was it. Like, I used to go outside and hang out in the creek, and we had, go running around on the golf course and whatever, but nope. That computer was home, and that's what I was on from then on.
Yep. Understood. So, all right. Yeah. So you became a prolific developer, in your, early on, right? So you had a bunch of games that you were writing. Your first one that was published, and published back then meant it was printed in a magazine, right? Was Scout Search?
Scout Search. Right? Yep. Yeah. How
did it feel when you I wrote this thing? It is in this magazine that people can buy.
I thought it was amazing. I think I got $100 for that game. And, back then $100 is different than $100 now. Yeah. And it took a half an hour to write it. So I wrote the article for it, and I sent it in. I was living in England at the time, and going to an American school on an American base in just north of London. So I sent it in. I had sent so much stuff in before, but something was different about this game was it wasn't a very long listing. It ran really fast and smooth because it was half basic and half assembly, and the listing was not that long. And the combination of those two languages made the magazine editors choose your game over anything that's just written in pure basic or anything that's just written in pure assembly, because there are different kinds of programmers that are reading the book, and they can learn from basic and probably not from assembly. And some people that are picking up assembly can learn from your listing because they want it annotated as well, commented all over the place. So I would do that. And, they chose it. And I was like, wow, okay, this is the formula. Basic to do heavy lifting for high scores and loading, initializing, and then assembly for the core loop. And then that keeps the listing smaller and more printable. And that's from then on, I sold everything.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So then you were also in other magazines like Uptime and Soft Disk Publishing. And in your book, you have this one really great story, right? And I know Softdisk Publishing is going to play a big role in your story. We're going to talk about that later. But I want to hear about your big move, right? Your big swing to impress Origin Systems, right? The home of Ultima, founded by Richard Garriott, right? Home to colleagues of ours, right? Warren Spector and Sherry Grainer-Ray, Sherry Grainer-Ray, excuse me, both of whom I just interviewed, like literally the last 2 interviews before you.
Nice.
So tell us real quickly about the big swing at the Origin booth during Apple Fest in 1987.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. I came to Apple Fest to get a job. Like, that was the only reason for me to go there. And I did not know it, but it was the last Apple Fest. So I went there with a box of discs. And as I walk into the place, there's the Uptime booth. And I went over there because I know these people. I hope Jay's here. And Jay Wilbur was there. And everyone was playing my game on all the computers there. So I was just like, wow. And the publisher came out and he offered me a job. So I was like, wow, I came here to get a job and I'm already like immediately offered a job. This is great. But what I really want is that over there. Origin Systems, They're advertising Warriors of Destiny, Ultima 5, October 31st, 1987. And so I walk over and they had several computers at several Apple IIs there. And the Apple II that I walked up to had been was running an Ultima 1 rewrite in assembly language because it was written in BASIC originally when Richard Garriott wrote it. Mm-hmm. So Richard wasn't there at the booth. He must have been walking around or something.
Holding court. Holding court.
He was already an industry legend at that time. He's amazing. And I just loved Richard's. I just thought he was amazing. He was a super smart guy. He made such great games. I love the fact that he started his own company. He did really well. And I love the ads. I love everything that he was doing. So it's just like, this is where I want to work. And I walked up to the Ultima 1 game and I just popped the disc out of the drive and put mine in and rebooted the computer. And so I got my game running up while the marketing director's running up and going, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I just wanted to show you my game. Check it out." And they're like, "Wow, that looks really good. What is that? How come there's so many colors? Those are different." And I said, "Well, it's double res, and double res is actually really hard to do on an Apple II. But yeah, check out the game for a second." I had it run. He's like, "Wow, that's really cool. Can I get your information?" And so I said, yeah, can I get your card? And so I just popped my disc out, put theirs in, reboot it, and it's back to normal. And so I had a card, and that was the most important thing. But I can't believe I walked in and rebooted. I took the game out of their own display and put mine in. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you had to just go, "Hey, let me show you how it's done." All right.
Yeah.
No, but
this is what I have to do to get a job at your company.
But the point is, take the swing, ask the question. The worst they're going to tell you is no. I mean, they could have also thrown you out of the booth, but they weren't going to do that there, right? This kid is coming in here with this. I love that story, man. I absolutely love it. Such a great lesson to teach. All right. So,
to do it.
And then, so they offer you this job. You go out there. I read the story about how you learned all this stuff about Commodore 64 because there was all this other kind of crazy stuff going on. You passed, all the bars. You stay at Origin for a little bit of time. I think maybe 2 years, right? And
9 months.
Oh my God, 9 months, right? Okay, yeah. Because then you leave to go to Softdisk. Like, wait a minute, just went. Okay, yeah.
No, I started my second game company.
IFD, Ideas from the Deep, right?
No, it's called Inside Out Software. IFD was my third one.
See, I
started the IFD 9 months after I started my second game company.
Okay.
I did Might Magic 2 with Inside Out Software. Yeah.
Because you were also
doing Magic 2 port.
You were doing some porting work for a bunch of for other companies at that time, right?
No. I was doing that at Origin.
Okay, all right.
Right. So I was porting 2400 AD, and then they decided to can that project. So I started working on Space Rogue with Paul Neurath.
Yeah, Paul Neurath. Yeah.
And then when I left Origin after 9 months, I co-founded a game company. It was my second company with my boss from Origin. He left as well, and we co-founded Inside Out Software, and we started porting He was doing the PC port, and I was doing the Commodore 64 port from the Apple II,
Right.
John Van Caneghem, right? So I had John Van Caneghem's assembly language to convert. And then I left there after 9 months. I was working on another game right after that. And I co-founded Ideas from the Deep with Lane. And then the fourth game company was id Software.
Okay, all right, yeah, but before that, there was this little
went to
bump in the
Softdisk,
Softdisk, right?
Yes.
Okay, brother, you have one of the messiest timelines to research online because of how prolific you were across your career. So I'm going to condense some of these to get through your whole history as much as we can in the next hour. All right. So let's say in '89, you head over to Softdisk, right? But you still were keeping your development company, on the side, right? So you have this Disc Magazine company, and it's really the id team that is there, right? And you guys go in and start running a group in there called the Gamer's Edge publication, right? For Softdisk.
Yeah, well, I was working at Softdisk in the PC department,
right?
And I wanted to make games. So I told the president, I'm going to leave if I can't make games. And he said, okay, we'll make it so you can make games. And I told him I need a team. I need another coder. I need an artist, and I need another guy who will just be the interface with the rest of the company, because I'm going to code all day. So, design and code. So he said, okay, we'll do it. And I hired John Carmack. I found him and I convinced him to come. And he moved down from Kansas City. Tom Hall was in the Apple II department,
right?
And he was not moving over to my Gamer's Edge department, but he came in at night because he couldn't help it. And then Adrian Carmack was a $5 an hour intern in the art room next door. And in the president said I could just choose any artist I want to come into my game room. So I asked Adrian if he'd be interested in doing game art, and he's like, sure, yeah. So I brought Adrian over, I brought John Carmack down, and at night Tom Hall came in, and we started making games, and immediately technical breakthroughs were happening. It was like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and that is the era when technical miracles seem to be happening like every week, right? But also, just to note, second big swing. CEO, I don't want to do this. I want to do this. You understand what I bring to the table. Let me go do it. Okay. All right, John, just do what you need to. All right. So when you talk about these technical breakthroughs, you're looking at Super Mario 3 and saying, how can we go ahead and do something similar to this in the PC, which the PC at that time could not go ahead and do smooth horizontal scrolling, right? And this led to Dangerous Dave in copyright infringement, right? Dangerous Dave being an earlier game of yours. So tell us real quickly about this Super Mario 3 PC demo, Dangerous Dave in copyright infringement.
Yeah, well, what happened was I had challenged Carmack to do horizontal scrolling, smooth scrolling, because I gave him this book that Michael Abrash had written called Power Graphics Programming, because he told me he wanted to learn about graphics and architecture on game architecture. So I was like, okay, here's the book. Bam, it has everything in it. And so he learned how to do vertical scrolling like a Xevious style game. Yeah. And so we made a game called Slordax, and that was using that. But I told him, no, horizontal is where it's at. Vertical, good job, but doesn't blow me away. And so I said, everything changes if you do horizontal. And he couldn't help but try to make that happen, even while making the vertical scrolling game. We have no use for horizontal, but he's like, it's a challenge. So at night, at about 11 o'clock at night, he gets it working finally. Tom Hall is still at the office because we loved what we did. Yep. And I had left about an hour earlier, and just to go home because it was 10 p.m. and we always got in at 10 in the morning. Right. So Tom came in the room. John showed him this, and Tom is always he's hilarious, right? He's always making jokes and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, it would be so funny if we use that tech to make Super Mario Brothers 3, but we stuck his character Dangerous Dave in it and called it copyright infringement." And so John's like, "Yeah, let's do that." So Tom basically started to draw the graphics for the first level of Super Mario Brothers 3. John made all the horizontal scrolling stuff work. And Tom pulled my character out of my game, and John got in his game, the new one, and had it bouncing around, and smooth scrolling was working and everything. And they put this on a disc as a joke and put it on my keyboard. And I came in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, ooh, they must have done something cool last night. Maybe a new build of Slordax that's got some cool new stuff in it. And I run it, and it's called Dave, just Dave, or something like the DDICI, I think, Dangerous Dave and Copyright Infringement. And so I run it, and then up comes the screen of Dangerous Dave and a judge with a gavel, and it says Dangerous Dave and Copyright Infringement. I'm like, I wonder what this is, and it pops up, and I see it looks like Super Mario Bros. 3's first screen with Dangerous Dave on it, and as soon as the screen started scrolling, he moved across the screen and it started panning, and I was just destroyed, mentally ruined for the rest of the day because it didn't exist. The PC had been out since August of 1981, and no one had done this since 9 years, right? Yeah. It has not been done in 9 years. This was the first thing. I played every game at the time. So I knew that this has never been done before on a PC, because that's all that matters is that context. Yeah. It's been done on all kinds of other platforms, right? But not the PC.
Right.
And what happened was, it was like I challenged Carmack. Carmack technically did this thing. It took Tom Hall, the design, his design idea, to make a joke and give it to me as this joke, just making something really funny, and then me seeing it, and it's immediately business opportunity. I saw it. I was like, the world has just changed, and I'm there. Oh my God, And so that's why our team was so good together, was because we all had strengths in different areas. Yeah, and it showed in that first demo that this is how we're going to take off.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to walk us through real quickly this piece. We're going to jump into it next. So basically, you guys showed it to Nintendo. Nintendo didn't want it. They were like, hey, good job, but we're not interested. But Scott Miller over at Apogee saw it and was like, hey, I've got this idea, this shareware model idea, and basically you guys worked together, created Commander Keen, and you did that through your IFD group, and you were taking soft disk machines home from the office at night because you didn't have your own machines, use them and then bringing them back. It's like, were you nervous? Like, you're walking out with the company machines with nobody knowing, going home, like, elves in shoes and building stuff, and then getting your asses back there the next morning.
Yeah, it's that exact same thing, right? We have to do this. We have to go for it. We didn't have computers at home that could do this. And this is the way we're going to do it. We had no bad intentions. Like, we're bringing those computers back because we still like our jobs. So that's what we did. And also, we were IFD at the very beginning, but when we started making Commander Keen, we became id Software, because one of the people that are at the very beginning he did not want to program on the PC. He did not like it. So he had to drop out of the team. And so it just became us four. And, so Adrian Carmack, John Carmack, Tom, and me. Yeah. So he dropped out, which meant a company name change, because he and I had ideas for the Deep together.
Got it. Yeah.
So when he left, because he hated the PC, then the four of us became a new company.
Amazing.
And that's how Commander Keen came out as id Software.
Right.
But yeah, that's what happened. We took those computers home, and on the weekends, it was funny because Scott Miller sent pizza money on Fridays. It was $100 and said pizza money on it. And what was funny is that Scott thought that like maybe that would help spur us to like work on the weekend, to keep on working on the game. He had no idea that we were living for the weekend. Yeah. Like, we couldn't wait. The weekend couldn't come soon enough to spend every waking hour, as long as we possibly could stay awake, working on the game.
Yeah,
and that's why it only took us 2.5 months.
I got to stuff them with pizza, keep these slackers moving. All right. Yeah. So, but the launch of Commander Keen and really leaning into that shareware model, right? Get the first levels first, and then really it created an economic environment that allowed you to leave soft disk and really just lean into id Software. And at the time you created, then you were doing, new levels and new designs for Commander Keen, but you were starting to get burned out on it. And so enter Wolfenstein 3D. So my question first, why Wolfenstein? Was it the love for Silas Warner's Apple II masterpiece, or which also, by the way, I found it that in doing additional research, I already knew enough about Silas, but he was also inspired by my favorite arcade game of all time, which is Robotron 2084, right? Yep. As part of the top-down design for Wolfenstein. So why Wolfenstein?
We were working on Keen 7. We were working on the final trilogy of Commander Keen. So we basically, it was 1 a.m. We've been working on this Keen, the next set of Keens for 2 weeks, and it's 1 a.m. We're all working, of course. And I just stopped. I just said, guys, we can't make this game. We need to stop. And they're like, what? And I said, we just delivered a 3D game, and then we move on to we made Catacomb 3D. We just shipped this 3D game,
right? And
then we are making another 2D game, and the future is 3D. That's where we need to be getting good at, not keep on making these 2D things that other platforms could do easily. No other platform can do that 3D that we had just done. We need to do another one, but it'll be for us. Because Capcom 3D we had sent to soft disk, right. And so the next game was going to be fully ours. And so I basically said the industry is going to be 3D. We need to be there. We need to stop wasting our time on this 2D stuff. So they immediately go, you know what? That's totally right. And we weren't too far in. It was only a couple of weeks, and then it was like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do then? What's the game going to be? And Tom, who's our creative director, just came up with an idea that was just kind of like Hover Tank Plus, and that was the previous 3D game that we had made, in May of 1991. And I said, no, that's not new enough. That's not really interesting. What would be really interesting? What would be really cool is a 3D version of Castle Wolfenstein. And they immediately were like, "Oh my God, that would be amazing!" They saw that, yeah, that's the game. And I don't know if it feels like it must have been fate, just the game had such a great story with it. It had it's a shooter, right? It's like a top-down shooter kind of thing, but it's right. But that's what we needed, to turn that viewpoint into something way more interesting. And so it was just 100%. The next day we were done with Keen, and we were immediately on Wolfenstein, and we already called it Wolfenstein. It was like Wolfenstein 3D from day one, even though we knew we couldn't really use the name because we thought that Muse still owned it. Yeah. Eventually we did buy it.
Yeah, you bought it
and we put it out
for $5,000, right? You bought it from somebody that would buy up old properties, right?
Yes. Yeah.
$5,000 and off you go. So, all right. Yeah. I mean, look, we were discussing before we started the call. I remember where I was when I was downloading Wolf 3D, right? So as I said, I was working for CompUSA. I built a CompuDyne 386 SX16. And as it turns out, that was the machine you also had. A 386 SX16. Don't know if it was the brilliant branding of CompuDyne. But I was downloading the shareware version from a friend's Wildcat BBS. And when I ran it, I was like, what is going on? Because we saw things like 4D boxing, wireframe and eight frames a second or something. This thing was a banshee. It just screamed straight out of the gate, And so maybe hit on what are the 2 or 3 key things that that you all did in design or the tech you think that just made this thing the powerhouse that it was. Real quickly, give me your 2 or 3 favorite key elements that you think made Wolf 3D such a hit.
Well, in design, it was about focusing on what the game was best at, and that was speed. And it was a run and gun game. So it was just get a gun and mow everything down, pick up everything, find the exit. And we added complexity to it, and we removed that complexity because it wasn't true to the core. So we focused on the core, and that's why the design worked really well. the technical aspect of it, the reason why it went so fast is because we put the VGA card into what's called chain 4 mode, and we could write 4 pixels at one time in that mode. And we had what's called a vertical span splitter that would draw vertical strips, and we only had to do as many strips as what were on the screen. If it was a full screen, it's 320, because 320 by 200 was the res back then.
Right.
So that's 320 ray casts and vertical blitz. And if you shrunk the screen down, that's just less ray casts and less blitz on the screen, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
bumped your frame rate.
So it was a very direct correlation to like what you were going to draw in and how many lines you basically told the game to go look at.
Incredible.
Ray casting.
yeah, incredible. And then, of course, your audio work that you had done there. And there's wonderful videos and interviews with you talking about the mechanics of that, including the talk that you actually did. You talked about the sound within the room and how you basically obfuscated the sound
zones.
Right, sound zones from triggering in other spaces. But then you could do, as you said, some very nefarious things. Just set up a trigger of it here, but it's actually
connected to another one real far away.
And you could start to hear them opening doors as they're getting to where the sound was, where it was connected to. So amazing design. And again, this was all cutting edge. Nobody had seen anything like this before. So once again, you're ahead of the curve. And Wolf 3D launches explosive, right? The add-on packs I sent away for them as well. Like, you didn't want just the first level, but now you have this influx of revenue where you're now really starting to build out the team. This is the moment where id Software is really just hitting their stride, right? So you're bringing enough revenue to do all this and start developing new projects. So now you're looking at the next thing down the road. How did the idea for Doom come about?
We were playing a D&D campaign, and I ended the whole campaign, unfortunately, by allowing demons to flood the material plane where everyone else lived, and it destroyed the planet. And that was the end of our D&D plane. But the idea of what happened with the demons just flooding through and ruining everything was the basis for of Doom's idea, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, let's take the idea of demons, but let's make this a sci-fi game. And instead of finding aliens in space through a portal, it's demons. So it's like, future and past are like colliding.
Right.
And that would be new. I haven't seen that before, And so that is kind of innovative. And then as we, develop the game, we're also trying to innovate by removing things like lives and score and making a much more sophisticated engine, by creating levels that no one had ever seen on any screen before, because there was no way to do anything that was not a 90-degree maze since the 70s. And so it was the first time that people had seen environments that were completely brand new and running super fast, So that's where the game idea came from.
Now, the game was developed in your office, and that was called Suite 666, right?
Yeah.
And where did the number actually come from?
666?
Yeah.
Well, it's evil. It's Doom.
I know. But there was you had a story about something to do with like the money that was coming in, or units that had shipped, or something about that.
No.
Was it just straight up? We are going to be 666 straight out the gate. Okay, great.
It kept people from coming to our office.
There you go.
That's why. Yeah, we're in the Bible Belt.
Okay, but here's what I love about the thing. So, Carmack has gone on to talk about, well, a story for these types of games doesn't matter so much, but you at least put the trappings of the story around there. And the fact is that in this game, you are sending demons back to hell. And I always loved the fact that if people just took the time to understand what you were doing, like this is not violence against other people.
Good.
Yes, this is like what you want to do, Yeah. And this goes back to that thing, man. Video games demand our attention because you cannot observe them on their surface. It is the art of the people that make it and the stories they want to tell. It's deeper. It requires you to not blitz right past it. You have to engage to understand it. And I love that. Yeah. I love that. All right. Doom had a really rapid development schedule, 17 months or so, right?
11.
Okay. 11 months. 11 months.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, well, maybe, okay.
We started in January, and then it shipped on December 10th, but 3 weeks were taken out because we had to port Wolfenstein to the Super Nintendo, so we couldn't work on Doom for almost a month.
Got it. Maybe one of the things I was reading was Carmack started working on initial tech, right? But you guys did Doom, and it dropped December 10th, 1993. Did I get that one right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And once again, man, using the shareware model, and I was also downloading it, but I also remember at the time there were some problems with getting this one out into people's hands. What happened when you all uploaded Doom, the first chapters to the servers?
It was hard to just upload it because everyone knew where it was going. So the maximum user count was already on the server waiting to download it, and we couldn't even get on. So we had to call the sysop at the University of Wisconsin and tell them to kick everyone off so we can get on it. So we did that, and we got on. But then when we uploaded it, it blew up the server 2 times because of the load of everybody trying to download it. So what was smart was them just distributing it onto the internet somewhere else on mirrors all over the place, and that got people off the server. And they're just like on the server channel message was just telling people other mirrors to go to get off of that one. So finally distributed, all over the place.
Amazing. Just amazing. I mean, yeah, you were one of the first companies to actually cripple, right, servers delivering things on the internet, right, at that time, which was, I mean, nobody knew what that was. A lot of us were still dialing into BBSs at the time. So, okay, it goes off. I mean, it's explosive, right? And so now you're at the pinnacle. I mean, this is the rock star, explosive moment, right? And this success is really changing the company. It's changing the composition of the company. It's creating some kind of tensions, within the team. I know Tom had left before in August, had left before that. Then the sequels come. Doom 2, even more explosive, right? And that's where you get all these refinements that are happening there. Also tools that were available to people to be able to go to mod things, everything. But there's also an Easter egg in the game starring you. And tell us real quickly about the John Romero head in Doom 2.
There was, at the very, the Icon of Sin is the boss of Doom 2. And the Icon of Sin, when you see it, is this giant wall, right, of this big demon head. And there's a part of the demon head that is exposed. It shows lava there, but it's supposed to be the brain. And you're supposed to shoot a rocket into it to take it out, but it's really hard to shoot that rocket up there. And while you're trying to do it, you're being attacked by demons all around you. So it's really tough to do. But when you shoot a rocket in there, you're hitting an entity that we had placed back there, which if you can no-clip through the walls was just a blue sprite, just a little circle, because no one's going to ever see it, right? So it doesn't need to be anything. So what happened is at the very end of the game's development, I was programming the sounds into the game for the sound effects for pain and for death for the Icon of Sin. And when I no-clip through the wall to just shoot it, why would I try and play it? I'm just going to go up to it, just shoot it. I come through the wall and I see it's my head on a stake that's getting hit back there. So I'm just like, oh. So the artist thought that when this game came out that they're gonna laugh and go guess what? Yeah, your head's in there. And I love this Easter egg. I'm the Icon of Sin, apparently, since I'm back here. What I wanted to do is put an Easter egg in that referenced to let them know I did know that their Easter egg was in there. So I went into the sound room. I think it was 11 o'clock at night, and Bobby Prince was there. And I said, dude, you will not believe what happened. So I told him the story. And then I said, I want to put a message in there that says, to win the game, you must kill me, John Romero. But I want you to pitch shift it and reverse it and make it sound all demonic. So he did that. I recorded it on the microphone, and he did all that, and it sounded so good. And what I did was I put it as the sight sound for the Icon of Sin. When it sees you, it plays that. And so it's oh no, this is really bad. And so I put an Easter egg to reference their Easter egg that they had hidden. And so I'm thinking, game's going to come out. They're going to say, ha ha ha, guess what we did? I'm going to go, I already knew. But what happened is American McGee comes in the office. First thing he does is gets the latest version, goes into the room, hears the sound, and goes, oh, scary backwards message. What does it say? And he reversed it, and then he told everybody about it. And so, like, the Easter eggs were both out. And we laughed about it. Yeah, we immediately laughed about it and said, we're keeping it in there. That's too good.
American.
So, yeah, we just kept it in.
What are you doing, man?
I know. It was pretty funny.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. So, okay, Doom 2 is out there, and you all are, I mean, you've got this Doom work done. There were expansion packs and like all these other kind of, additions that happened with this. And now the team's asking what next? So in comes Quake. How did the development of Quake differ from Doom? Was it an engine first or a concept first? Like,
Quake was a concept, definitely. It was a concept. It was the next game we wanted to play as a character named Quake, who was in that D&D campaign, that same D&D campaign. And we actually attempted to make this game right after the original Commander Keen. So in January of 91, we started to make Quake. And we're like, you know what? Technology is not here to make this thing look good. Let's just put it on ice, work on something else. So we did. That was 1991. We waited for many years. It was 1995. So we waited 4 years before we could actually start on it. And we'd made massive advances in technology up in that 4 years. So it was an idea. And all of 1995 was, building up that whole design idea of what Quake was going to be. And, it was in magazines. It's on the cover. The big Quake hammers on the front of PC Power magazine, like it's all over the place. And when it gets to the point, it was taking a really long time to make the engine. And when we hit November of 95, the engine was finally done. But the team was also kind of done. Like they were so burned out from trying to make a game, but not being able to, and not understanding, what they could have done to, we just did not plan well for that game. And so the design of Quake, which was not going to be a shooter, we decided we're going to make a shooter because we know how to do it and we can get it out quickly and people can stop being burnt out. If we just get the kind of game that everybody understands done, they'll be in a better space. So the funny thing is the team was burnt out and we went into crunch mode for 7 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And we got the game out, we got the game out and then I left, just about a month and a half after getting the game out.
Yeah. I mean, look, finding that balance, right, between deadlines and vision becomes difficult, especially when, consistent with your career, consistent with it and your team is you just kept pushing the boundaries of what the tech could do out there. And it wasn't enough to just go and release the one. Then you get this, other set of packs or a little extension. Then it's like, all right, let's hard stop it here. Let's just go take it, completely different in different direction. You had Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails, right? Get involved too. Yeah. And I think you talked about it in another interview where you said they didn't want music, they wanted like character.
I wanted ambience.
There you go. There you go. Mm-hmm.
I wanted an ambient soundscape that was disturbing. I wanted the player to feel just disturbed being in this world, that it was unsettlingly, possibly violent. And because there's not really a game that made anyone feel that way before,
Yeah.
So I thought it would be a really interesting design experiment to kind of like make an environment where like nothing's happening, but you just feel very uneasy being there.
Yeah.
And of course there's gonna be lots of action, but like just as a nothing's on the screen feeling, and the sound really does contribute to that. So it's like that's the soundtrack that would really be very different to everything that we've ever made. In fact, because Quake was so different, I had taken our id logo and I sent it to a agency and had them just mess it up. And that's the id logo we still have today, is the one I sent out to have it just like roughed up and messed up and make it look metal and the same color as Quake, that copper color. And it's remained that way since 1996.
Amazing. Yeah, everything you do is metal, man. We know that. Right? And so, you know what? Too, what I love about Quake is even in the buttoned-up Sun Microsystems that I worked at the time, Dave Taylor had done a port of it, and it was running on Solaris. Like we had we had this thing running. The company would shut down over the Christmas break, and we would go in and we would set up multiplayer on Sun Microsystems networks. and go into the office and play on these machines because we actually had access to it. And as I mentioned to you before, when we were building javagaming.org and doing that stuff, one of the community members took it, ported it to Java. We had the thing on stage at Java 1 running like 200 or 300 frames a second. Right? And people are like, how are you doing all this? And you and I already discussed how you do it because you're just talking to hardware, right? Stop being so limited the way you think about stuff. But yeah, so all right, so Quake just, again, it just changed what we thought about from these types of first-person environments and shooters. And, you know, with, again, the crunch and the kind of the tension and kind of direction of the company, you found yourself deciding, hey, you know, it's probably best if I leave now and I have ideas to go start something else. And so you leave id Software, and in the same year, in 1996, right, you start a new company, Ion Storm, right? Now I remember when you all announced this, right, and the coverage for the opening was amazing. It was like a playground for any creative thing that you wanted to do. Like, how did it come together so quickly? I mean, you had just left, and now you're opening this thing that, you know, everybody wants to know what's going on.
It was such a busy time too, because like me leaving id, I made that decision in January of '96, and I left in August, so I already had planned it because of that big redesign, and just like, you know what, it's I need to kind of be on my own and do this. So Ion Storm, the day after I leave id, I basically get a call from Epic. And then the next day it's Activision, and I'm like flying out and people are coming to my house, and like, it was so busy from the day after. I went to so many places, and you know, just so like, I got to pick a publisher, and I need somebody who's going to be able to handle multiple games. I'm not just going to make one game here. I'm going to make at least 3, probably 4 games at a time. So I needed at least 3 was planned at the beginning. I need a company that is doing well, that can pay for a company that's making 3 games. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Eidos was a rocket with Tomb Raider. You know, they were doing so well. And Mike McGarvey, who was the president at that time, totally believed in the vision of Ion Storm. And he got us signed up pretty quickly after we had been talking to a bunch of people who also wanted to do it. He was the one who I was just like, that's a rocket, that company. I feel way more confident being with Eidos. And we were with Eidos the whole time. So it was just great. You know, it was about a half a year of work to get to that point of signing and everything. But it felt probably really fast for everybody else.
It did. I mean, for people looking in from the outside, absolutely it did. And, you know, Warren Spector mentioned a story about how you approached him and said, you know, look, man, biggest budget, biggest team, like, make the game of your dreams. And he was like, how could I say no to this? And, you know, he went on to state just how grateful he is that you enabled him to be in that place to create Deus Ex. And so but again, this speaks to who you are, John, right? And it's, you know, yes, metal and all this stuff and fast and, you know, D&D and gore and yeah, but behind it is like the nicest guy, right? Who just wants to make art, who wants to make games, who wants to go and tell stories, right? And this is what you did, you know, at Ion Storm. We know the stories, and there's lots of write-ups about these things, but this is a space now where you can breathe kind of creatively. And I know Daikatana was really about stretching your legs from that storytelling perspective in the context of the 3D shooter, but Anachronox was leaning more into kind of the Japanese RPG type of models, but using a 3D engine to try to tell the story. So you've got these two games that are using technology that's at the core of what you have built before, and you're coming off the back of 3 monstrous hits and 1 other hit, right, Commander Keen, which, you know, everybody still loves to this day, right?
It was
exactly.
Huge when it came out,
4 massive hits. And so, I mean, that pressure, I mean, were you feeling that pressure from your past, or were you really leaning into the breathability that you now had from a creative perspective?
It was really, the pressure was just me. It wasn't from outside. It was just like, I got to make something really great because, we got ourselves into an office space that was really expensive. And, it was nice, but it was like, yeah, there's a lot of money that we're putting into this, and these games have to be really good to make it. So I obviously felt pressure that I got to make a really good game. I'm going to keep on doing what I know how to do. And it was a lot of work. Trying to run a company as 120 people. We had 4 teams at one point, and then went down to 3 teams. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just, man, so much happens. The bigger a company gets, the more crazy the things they can happen when you have like teams all over the place. Because it wasn't just our team. There's a web team. There's a marketing team. There's finance. There's biz dev. Like so much stuff. Yeah. So focusing on the game was really hard. And so it was really a lot of work, and but I learned a lot. I learned so much, like you learn the most from your failures.
Sure.
And so I really did learn a lot, but I was really happy that Tom got to make a really great, RPG.
Yeah.
And Warren got to make anything that he wanted to make, because I had such confidence that Warren would do such a great job. And he did. He made like a game of the decade, basically.
Yeah. And it still resonates, just like your earlier work too, to this day, right? And, it's kind of like, congratulations, you're successful. Now you don't get to design and make stuff. Now you get to manage people. Now you get to deal with building and contracts and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and so what I love now is, okay, so after Iron Storm winds down, Deus Ex and Tom's Game are the last 2 to ship. The company gets wound down, and then you are off doing a whole bunch of creative things. You were doing some work on a Gauntlet game with Midway. You founded Monkey Stone Games. You went in as editor-in-chief of Retro Gamer magazine for a period of time, which I'm a digital subscriber of. Love it, absolutely love it. And so you had a whole variety of things that you did. So never slowing down. And then we kind of get to where you are currently today. So you marry Brenda Garno in 2012, a game designer in her own right, and we're going to be, like I said, interviewing her in January of 2024. I can't wait. And you founded Romero Games in Ireland, where you now reside, and you're making games with your family. And the first one you did wasn't like, it was another Dangerous Dave game, right? Was the first one, or was it Gunman Taco Truck?
Gunman Taco Truck, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a game idea. Yeah, it was a great game idea. Donovan, our son, who was 9 years old when he came up with the idea for this game, and he gave us the pitch, and Brenda recorded it on her phone, and it was really great. He had such a great idea for a core loop for a game, so we decided that it would be a really great lesson to show him that really powerful ideas can motivate people to form teams and make products. That's what we did. So we decided to really work on it, and we were doing game jam development, which is like one weekend a month for a year. We would start just working on, we'd keep on working on the game, and he'd be there with us and like telling us we're doing a good job and everything. And he wrote the whole design doc out, which was really great. The way to, it's easy to just come up with all kinds of ideas and limit endlessly. But what I did was I gave him some paper, and each of the different types of things in the game, I only gave him the number of sheets of paper that we wanted to put in the game. So it limited what he could come up with. And when all that paper was full of his drawings and ideas, that's what we made. That was the game. There was no extra pieces of paper, right? So it was a great constrained design doc. And we made this game, and when we finally put it out in 2016, it did really well, and Apple chose it as a game we love for the App Store. Donovan had done interviews with the Wall Street Journal and VentureBeat, GamesBeat, and a bunch of other places. And Adult Swim wanted the game. Like, it was
That's
just
awesome.
it was just huge. They wanted the IP first. Like Cartoon Network wanted the IP. Adult Swim loves the title. Gunman Taco Truck says everything.
Yes.
And so, so it was it was just really, really fun making the game with Donovan and Michael, the oldest son, was a programmer on it. Brenda was helping with production and design, and Avalon and Mesa were helping with playing the game, play testing it on different platforms. And it was super, super fun to make that game and put it out there. And it's still available, like since 2016, I think. It's still up there.
I love that. I love that, getting everybody involved in it. And it's more than the game, right? It goes back to what we were talking about before. It was about empowering people to tell stories and leaning into your strengths and working on something you can care about and doing it with people that you love. Like that's
Yep.
the best, right? That's the absolute best, right?
Yeah.
And then you had some other games. So you had Sigil that was going back to your roots, right, in Doom and building out these levels, Empire of Sin. And tell me, what did you just push today, like 2 hours ago?
Yeah, it was the pre-orders for Sigil II were just made available at 6 p.m. our time, which is 2 hours ago. And we're doing reveals of the box art, like the thing that's going to be on the front of the box, and posters and everything. We made available T-shirts. We put 3 different editions out there. There's the game comes on a little USB shotgun shell like this, and so it just comes off with a USB. And we have a version that has a 3.5-inch disc, like the data's on a real 3.5-inch disc, and it has a shotgun. And then another version that has a 5.25-inch disc and a 3.5 and the shotgun shell.
Oh my gosh.
So that edition sold out within a minute. It was gone.
I was going to say, here I am now finding myself again in front of a machine for the launch of one of your games, right? So
yeah,
it wasn't planned that way, but look at that, right? That's how the universe works. Oh, that's incredible. And I believe you were also, can you tell me some of the charity work around some of that as well?
Yeah. One thing was when after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, just to support Ukraine, I made a Doom 2 level for the first time since 1994, and put it up as they called it One Humanity, and the money from that game, from that level, it's just one Doom 2 level, put that out and donated the money to the Red Cross. That's helping Ukraine. So that was great because a lot of people really wanted to support it, and it was like €5 or something like that. So it's pretty low price. Anyway, it was cool to do that. Those are one of the things that I do, as well as go speak to disadvantaged communities, like kids at schools, low income schools, and just let them know, like, I know where you're at and I know where you can be. And all it takes is, interest in something and focus and determination, and you can get there. And, that's like done this all over the place. Yeah. But yeah, it's like give back, Yeah,
but that, again, it comes from just, it comes from a place of just goodness and wanting to build stuff and to engage with people and to create more moments of connection. And that's been evident throughout your entire career. And that's why I said, at the beginning here, seeing you get the Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's GDC was incredible, and was just so happy to see that. And one last little story here before we close this out is you never know the work that you put out into the world where it's going to reach. And so every year, practically since this one event happened, I see a picture of you and me one time a year. I was having my taxes done one year, and this is going back 2011. This is GDC 2011.
Wow.
So I was, I had met with my tax accountant, and we were talking about games and everything. He said, "Oh yeah, my favorite game of all time was Doom 2." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, hold on." And he opens up his drawer and he's like, "Here are the discs." I'm like, let me have them. I'm actually having lunch with John and Brenda when we go to GDC. And he's like, get out of here. I'm like, no, he's a super nice guy. I have no problem asking him if he'd sign them. So he hands them to me. I leave, I go to GDC. We're sitting down at a Mexican restaurant. I forget the name of it, right there by Moscone. And you're like, yeah, of course. It's here signing. And then we get this nice picture together, and I give him back, and I send him the picture and everything. I go back to get my taxes done the next year. He had them box framed with our picture in the middle of them, and it's hanging right over his head. So you come in. He's like, everybody asks me about this all the time. So every year, when I get my taxes done, I see you just smiling there with the discs, and I'm like, I love it. I absolutely love it. John, an incredible career, something that, has affected so many people in such a positive way, from helping to kind of bring people together to play online, tools for people to go and help create, the stories that you tell, and the outreach that you do to talk about, look, if you lean into the things that you love and you find the people that are equally passionate, you can do really amazing things in the world. So I would just want to thank you so much for taking time with us today to tell us about your story. And, this is, I'm grinning ear to ear. This is amazing. Just absolutely amazing. So thank you, John, so much for spending time with us today. Yeah,
well, thanks so much for having me on. It was really, really great.
Excellent.
And thanks everybody for listening.
All righty.